Hello everybody, it's Gail here from Ornamentology. As some of you know, I ventured into the world of upcycling books and making junk journals. This is one of my latest offerings. I finished this morning. I've made two that's about Alice. I've got a third one in my head that needs to come out. You know what it's like when you're a creative person. It stays in your head and then it haunts you until you get the thing out. But this is the one that I've made using a digital download that I purchased from a lady on Etsy, as is the next Alice book, which is a completely different artwork altogether. So all of the actual artwork in here is the digital download. I'll point that out as I go along. The contents of the main journal and the pages from that are my own work, and how I've put this together is my own work. This is printed on a linen union, so it feels really lovely, and as you handle it, it's going to get grubbier and grubbier, and that'll be rather marvelous, I think, because you know we all think we've got clean hands but we never have. So that's quite lovely. This is a piece of chiffon that I've used to tie it with because it kind of complements the colour. I like this because it's not standard Alice colours, and I quite like that, I have to say. I've learned all these different folds from watching a few hours of YouTube, and I've put them together in my own way because I think, yes, that's a good skill to have, but I don't want it to look like that. So I've kind of done it my own willy-wally way, like you might imagine, really. So this is how it starts. So we start off with I'm late, and we open here, and we've got this painting roses. I've made some little tuck spots. Had to learn a whole new language. These are not round deliberately because nothing's quite ordinary in Alice Land, is it? I bought secondhand. Why wouldn't I buy it secondhand? A die cutting gadget from Sizzix, from this nice lady on eBay, and she sent me a few dies with it, and then I bought other dies. This is supposed to be a postage stamp for something completely else, but I quite liked that on there, so I used it. I like the shape, so I used that. This is a piece of my own efforts. It's a shape that I made using hot glue and then used it as a stencil on my gel pad printing plate. Try saying that. I love it. It's just a little offcut, and you can just write a jot on there if you want to, put your secrets in there. And these little things all fit into this tuck spot, don't you know? It's interesting learning a new language for a different thing, isn't it? I've made this tag. It was just a strip of paper. I realised when I'd printed this that I'd got the hearts going up one way on one side and the other way on the other, but you know, that's because at the time I didn't understand the orientation of my printer. I'd like to say I've got it whacked now, but I wouldn't count on it. And this is packing paper. It feels really nice. This is a very smooth paper, and this is very wrinkly, and I quite like the different textures. And you can write on this, obviously, if you should choose to do so. I mean, these pockets, you could take all this out and put your own stuff in if you felt like it. You know, once it's yours, you do as you will with it. And then this opens. I'm just going to move it along a bit because I don't want to run out of table. There's Alice, her lovely self. And then in here, again, second hand, because why wouldn't it be? This is a bottle shape cutter thing for my die cut machine. A bit of a stray bit of card that I just shaped the top and punched a hole in. Found some sparkly red leather and used that to tie the top. I went to Ghoul a few weeks ago, and it was Alice themed, and this was my badge. This is my trader badge. That was great on my chest. I don't know quite what I was trying to say to people there. I cut out some little heart-shaped things because, you know, it's Alice and you need to do heart-shaped things, don't you? And these just stack up in here. How you choose to use them in your journal is entirely up to you, really. I don't think that there's a right or wrong way to do it. I've just kind of piled these in, and you can add them to the pages if you feel inclined. This is just a little bit more of that brown packaging paper. I get a bit obsessed with brown paper, as you will discover as you see more of these. And I've just put this little lug on here so you can actually get it in and out okay. And again, I've used a circle punch to make this little divot, but I've used, usually you used half of it, but I've kind of used it a bit creatively. I quite like that as a sheet as it was, again, from this digital download. So I've just left it as is. And then here, because it's Alice, I've made this a bit on the wonky. So I've used that square shaped thing again, which is supposed to be a postage stamp thing. Bit more of this brown paper that you can write on. And I've kind of inked it a bit just to make it look a bit old and distressed, really, if that's your gig. And then this is a lifty up one. It just seemed nice to have some of these actual words just as they were. I won't read them because reading out loud is not my strong suit. This is an offcut from a little journal that's at the back. We'll come to that in a minute. And again, you can write on here. And then this all folds back up nicely. together. Then we move on to the main event. Again, digital download from the same set of stuff. It's really lovely, and I've printed it onto this kind of soft card. It feels very smooth, and then it's a contrast to the papers. These papers that it's just copier paper that I dye myself, and this has been sprayed and printed by my lovely self, and it's iridescent and shiny. Look, I quite like a bit of that, and it picks up with some of the blues. The pink is avocado dyed paper. That's an interesting smell when it's cooking, I have to say. This is patina from the tin I put it in to soak it overnight. The longer you soak it, the pinker it gets. It does say to dry it in the oven, but I've actually had quite a lot of success just sticking it on a plastic tablecloth and just letting it dry naturally. And I think, you know, we don't need to be racking up our gas bills. This ledger is a Teach Yourself double entry bookkeeping in pounds, shillings and pence, from a bank, I think about 1940s. 50s probably, and it's really lovely. More packaging paper. This time I dyed it, and because it's all wrinkly, it went quite interesting. Bit more of this fold out. You can write stuff on there if you want to, stick those bits and bobs on, whatever you like. The blue paper is red cabbage. You can imagine what your house smells like, can't you, when you've boiled a red cabbage for an hour? But you know, it's okay, it's all right. This was an envelope that went in the dye bath, and I used it for something else, so it's got holes down it, but that project I wasn't very happy with it, so I've took it out, and rather than actually waste the envelope, I've used it here as a little tucking in place. And again, I've used the offcuts of the spare bits of the sheets to just make these little things that you can do what you like with them, really. I think people stick them on their pages, or they might glue them and tuck something in like that, maybe, if you felt like it. But, you know, it's your journal, and I'd like to leave you something to do with it, because you don't want me to do all the work for you now, do you? That would be a bit rude, I think. So more patina again from the avocado, picking up the rusty bits. This bookmark is just a silly little doings, really. When I stitched the book together, I left one of the sides of the stitching thread long and just made a little bookmark so that, you know, you don't lose your place. So there's more of this. I dried the paper on something with a grid, so we get this pattern because it dries out that way. I decided, since I was going to make journals, that I would have some marketing, because goodness knows why I wouldn't. And I made this postcard design on a photo editing thing that I've got on my computer. It's not fancy, and it's not Photoshop, because I'm not clever enough for that. But I kind of dragged and dropped and fiddled and faffled about a bit, and said, you know, in past times old books were often reused. Spoke a bit about what ephemera means, and on this side you can write on it, so it's not just gratuitous advertising. You can actually do something useful with that. And this is it tied, a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, and that's the long end that makes your bookmark tie. And then much the same on the other side, but the papers are slightly different, because when they overlap and they dry differently on one end to the other. And, you know, there's some interesting marks where they've had another page lying on top of them, and they've got strange and funky creases in them. Blobs from when it dried in the tin and it's picked up the rust patina. A little bit of salt staining here I put on it, and I quite like that. I mean, how lovely is that? It's quite natural. I don't design this, it's kind of the way it dries, really, so it's as much a surprise to me as it is to you. I've obviously had another sheet laying on top of that, look, because it's slightly different there than it is there, which is quite nice. And more of the same, really. That's quite an interesting shape. Obviously it was a bit more rusty this end, and then we're back to the other side of that sheet, the back of that piece. And then on the back, in the back here, I went a bit to town with I don't think we need that bit. I went to town with the die cutting thing, and I thought, oh, look, I can put Alice on this, in this bottle shape. If I get it lined up in a good way, I can have her trapped in a bottle. So I've got her stuck in there, which is quite lovely. And I had some spare bottles, so I stuck them together to make this little tuck spot, they're called. Don't you know? You have to learn a new language when you make new stuff. More heart shapes. You can write on there if you wanted to. And then I made this little file folder with, again, another sheet from the digital download. And this is small pieces of, I had this strange tea, and it was supposed to be blackcurrant tea, and it tasted of hot water. It looked wonderful, but it tasted of hot water. So I made my pot of tea, and then I dunked paper in. So it's a kind of an off-white colour, a bit more packaging paper, and I've kind of interspersed those together. And then to stop the stitching pulling out, I've just put a little bit of paper in there. It's just a bit of frou-frou, really. And it's just a little file folder that came from a die set that was to do with the one that's got the in the front. But it's just kind of a cute little thing. So it's an extra little journal, and they just fit in there. And then we're at the end. So, and this is the back of the journal. Again, it's that really beautiful linen union, and I quite like it. And it's just got this little tie fastener. It's all of this has run through business has been made possible because I bought a gadget. I know I'm not very good at gadgets. I'm seemingly not very good at tying a bow either. Gadget, because they always go a bit wrong when I try and use them. But this is obviously very idiot proof because I've managed to do it. It's like an angle poised lamp, and you fit your phone to the top, and then it's got a ring light over the top, and it means that I can wave my arms about in reckless abandon, actually have a fighting chance of keeping the journal in the space, and it works. It actually works for me. So what more do you need to know about this journal? In its size, probably. So it is 17 centimeters or 6.5 inches in old money this away, and across it's 4.5 inches or 11.5 centimeters this way, and it's about, what, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch. What would that be? A couple of centimeters wide. It's not too heavy. I can send it through the post to you in a jiffy bag. That would be absolutely marvellous. And you never know, I might even wrap it up in something and send you some extra little doodahs if you so wish. It's available now. I'm going to sort of formulate some kind of shop, because even though I think my hats didn't do well in a shop, I think these might, especially if I put the run through there, and I might do edited highlights. I don't know. I'm not quite sure how my editing skills are, but I've done this in one take. I've had a few goes, but I've done it in one take. So these hopefully will get more slick, or maybe they won't, knowing my past being taken into consideration. But here she is. It's called Alice, and it's available now. If you're interested in this little book, or you'd like to see it in action, I'll bring it with me when I come to my next event is Newark Steampunk event at the end of May. But you know, if you fancy it, send me a ping and we'll talk about it, and I'll get it posted out to you, or you can collect it on my stall, whatever takes your fancy. Anyway, thank you for your time. I hope I've not bored you half witless, and if you've got any questions, just let me know. Thank you very much. Goodbye now.